be exploring different ways of doing lean. So today's session marks the first gathering of the new all-Ireland LeanHE Ireland group. And I'd like to extend a very warm welcome to colleagues joining us from across the country, from institutions such as UCC, TU Dublin, the University of Ulster, DCU, Queen's University, and the University of Limerick. Today's session also forms part of UCD's Work Smarter Together week, which includes 22 different sessions running across the week. And I, of course, would like to extend a very warm welcome to our colleagues from across UCD joining us today as well. As many of you know, Michael Sinnott has been a catalyst for initiating LeanHE Ireland after attending the LeanHE conference in November 2019, which I'm sure feels like a complete lifetime ago at this stage. But he did volunteer to bring colleagues from Ireland together in order to explore possibilities. So here we are today. Because we have such a diverse group here for today's session, it would be wonderful to get a sense of who everyone is and where they're coming from. So I'd ask each of you just to take a moment to introduce yourself in the chat facility and let us know who you are and where you're coming from. All of us within our different organizations spend a lot of time and energy trying to make things better in one way or another. And today should give us an opportunity to hear from 4 different organizations, all at different stages in their journeys, taking different approaches. And the purpose really is to show you this variety and hopefully inspire you on what might be possible in your own organization and how you could go about making things happen. So I'd like to welcome our 4 speakers today who are joining us today. We have John Hogg, who is Director of Continuous Improvement at Strathclyde University, Brian Clancy, who is the Process Improvement Manager at An Post, Michelle Nelson, who is Service Improvement and Change Manager at UCC, and of course, Michael Sinnott, who is Director of Agile here at UCD. So to start off with, we would like to get an understanding of where everyone is in their lean journey and what their experience is. So we're going to hold a really quick poll. The purpose is so we can make our discussions as useful as possible. So Jeremy's going to put a really quick poll up on the screen. I'd ask that you all just take a moment to fill it in. It's anonymous and it's only 1 question. So hopefully it won't take too long, and it'll just give us a sense of everyone's experience within the lean process.
Votes are flying in, or answers are flying in, I should say.
Good stuff. I'm expecting everyone to be an expert.
You may be disappointed. 54 of 59 have voted, so.
Super.
Can let me know when people run out of time. We're at 40 seconds so far.
Yeah. I think if you want, you can close it now. We don't have to have 100% response rate, just to give us a good sense of where people are at.
Okay, we got 93%, so I'm going to stop it now.
Brilliant. That's good. Good response rate.
There we go. Sharing the results.
Okay, so we do have a few experts in the room, but it looks like everybody is in that middle ground with a little bit of experience, but wants to find out more. And that's really helpful. And hopefully our conversations today will be useful to you. So now that we have a sense of who everyone is and where they're coming from, I think it'd be good to actually meet our 4 panelists. So we have 4 really interesting and diverse panelists. And in a minute, I'm going to ask each of them just to take no more than 2 minutes to introduce themselves very quickly and let us know about their experience working with Lean. Then we'll have a conversation around a few different topics related to Lean, and we will have a questions and answer session at the end. So if you do have any questions, please pop them in the chat facility as we go along. Please remember to include which panelist your question is for. My colleague Michelle, a different Michelle, is going to keep an eye on the chat. And if questions do pop up that are directly related to the conversation we're having as we go along, we will of course address them within our conversation. So I'd like to start off now and get the panelists to introduce themselves. So Michael, I'm going to start with you, please.
Hi, I'm Michael Sinnott. I'm the Director of Agile in UCD, and we're a small support team of three, with two colleagues on an associated project. And we've been running for about 5 years, and we were set up out of our 2015 strategic plan. So began working in 2016 with a goal to help the university on an efficiency and agility agenda. And in doing that, then bring in Lean as a skill set, but more broadly develop capabilities. And that was one of our objectives: developing capabilities. Building a continuous improvement culture was a second one, and the third one was helping the delivery of value and excellence itself. So that's how we were set up. And an interesting thing to note in setting up UCD is that we weren't a burning platform, and we weren't one of the environments where there were lots of issues that needed to be fixed, because UCD, as an analysis goes, broadly works. So we were brought in to support improving it. And just to say, that's my starting point. And just to say why John and Brian and Michelle are on the call. I met John at LeanHE in Michigan back in the days when we traveled to conferences back in 2019. I've met Brian through a network of Lean Six Sigma folks around the country, and I've met Michelle through looking to set up LeanHE Ireland. So a great thing about being involved in this kind of conversation is you meet lots of interesting people. So that's a huge plus for me.
Great, thank you, Michael. And I'll go along the screen as I see you, John.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. It's lovely to be here. My name is John Hogg. I'm Director of Continuous Improvement at the University of Strathclyde in Glasgow. I've worked at the university for around 19 years, and during that time I've worked in a number of different areas, including a sort of central faculty role, academic department role, and also supported a number of large-scale change projects as well within the university. In 2013, I was asked to establish the continuous improvement function in the university, which is a new initiative for the university at that time. And I think it's fair to say that around that time, or that came after a period of quite significant change within the organisation, a lot of restructuring, voluntary severance schemes, etc. So it was about re-establishing the university and moving forwards, growing the university, things like moving up the rankings, increasing our income, all that kind of stuff. So part of our reason for being at that time was really to create capacity within the organisation to enable it to grow over the subsequent years. So that was basically why the continuous improvement function was set up in 2013. The way we work has evolved over the last 7 or so years, and that's something I'm sure I'll get the opportunity to talk a little bit more about over the course of today. In terms of other roles that I have, Michael's mentioned LeanHE Europe. I'm currently chair of LeanHE Europe and a member of the LeanHE Global Steering Committee.
Thank you, John. And Michelle.
Sure, Nessa. Good morning, everybody. So I am the Service Improvement and Change Manager in UCC, and I have been in my role for exactly 1 year as of Monday of this week. So I honestly didn't know how to answer the poll, whether to put I have a bit of experience but wanted to learn more, or am I a bit of an expert? And I put myself, I suppose, in both categories. I'm hoping to learn more this morning, but I would like to share our experiences in UCC because we have very much combined our lean journey with one area that I am becoming an expert in, which is change management, and also an interest that UCC has taken in service design and design thinking. So the UCC Journey to Lean started back in 2014, and I did a Lean Green Belt in 2016 when I was head of graduate studies. And it was through my involvement in Lean, but also through doing an MBA dissertation on service design, that I ended up being seconded into a role in redesigning student services. And that was one change project as part of a whole change program that UCC was going through at the time. And it was very much focused on project management, but myself and 2 other project managers ended up doing some change management training as part of that. And UCC has now really combined lean, service design and change in terms of how it focuses on its improvement initiatives, and particularly through a big change program that we're currently undergoing. So that's both my background and the lean journey that UCC has gone through in a nutshell.
Thank you, Michelle. And I think we will definitely come back and revisit that idea of combining lean with change management, hopefully later on in our session today. And last but by no means least, Brian, could you introduce yourself, please?
Yeah, sure, Lorna. Good morning, everybody. I'm Brian Clancy. I'm one of 2 business process improvement managers at Untitled here in Dublin. I feel like a bit of a gay crasher here at a wedding with the group I see in front of me. So Michael has asked me just to give you kind of a warts and all overview of how things have gone in on Post. So we're the postal delivery company, 100% government owned, a bit like Royal Mail in the UK or La Poste in France, and so on. We've about 9,000 employees. The world that we operate in has changed dramatically. So the digital world has closed one door on our mails business with e-substitution, and it's opened another with the world of e-commerce. So we're trying to change from one world to another. It's been a very slow, gradual process, as you can imagine, in a highly unionized environment. We have traditionally been very slow to change. About 2% of our total workforce has a 3rd level qualification. So that's what we're dealing with. We began in 2010. The burning platform for us at the time was our quality of service was down as low as 72%. That would be next day delivery. Our regulator had set a target of about 94%. So Six Sigma was brought in on the basis of many improvement projects to deliver an improvement in quality. We found that apart from quality of service projects, we had a number of improvement efficiency in projects that kicked off as well as almost like a byproduct. So we got probably 3 or 4 years of great success that waned over time. I began in 2014. I don't think it was linked to that waning. I became a black belt 2015, and I've been working continually in that field since then. In the last 3 years, because of changes to the world we're operating in, the business we're operating in, we've had to pivot to lean more than Six Sigma. So it's not so much of a quality as much as general operational excellence and efficiency, and also changing the culture. So I can talk about that later on. That's really me, and looking forward to today's session.
Brilliant. Thanks a million, Brian. And while you are an outlier, I think that it's really useful and inspiring for us to hear successful stories of lean from different organizational contexts. And I think there are parallels, particularly in, hopefully when we get chatting about, like you say, cultural issues as well within organizations. So to get started with, I think really the first thing I wanted to ask each of you is if you could tell us a little bit about how you got started with using lean within your institution. So John, I might start with you, coming from someone who's been working in the area for quite a long time. How did you get started with lean?
Well, as briefly as I can, I think as an organisation, we sort of dabbled with lean. I think it's fair to say probably in the early sort of 2010, 2011 sort of time. We have a Faculty of Engineering at the University of Strathclyde, which actually teaches Lean Six Sigma. So it was ultimately at that point driven by the academic department responsible for that. So there was a sort of a pilot project around Lean Six Sigma around 2011-12 with people being trained, undertaking projects, etc. And I think it's fair to say it had a partial success, but it wasn't really. It didn't have I think the strategic alignment that was the executive team were actually looking for, and that then led to a change in focus and moving in I guess a similar way to Brian's outlined, a move from a Lean Six Sigma approach to a Lean approach in 2013. And at that point, we engaged with an external organisation to basically train up a central team in the sort of core tools, techniques of Lean. And that lasted for around 6 months. So basically day in, day out training from an external provider, including myself receiving that over a period of 6 months. So that's how we started with a team of 4 people at that time. And that team has grown, it's fluctuated over the years between 4, 6, 8. We're currently at 8, but in the process of recruiting a manager at the moment to expand the team a little bit more. So that's the kind of how we got started. Is that enough for now, or do you want to talk a little bit more about the why?
Well, yeah, the next thing I wanted to ask you about was about why, but yeah, I mean, it would make sense for you to talk to us a little bit about why and what was at the heart of the move towards Lean for you. Okay,
I mean, I did reference it slightly earlier when I talked about this, in a sense, the turmoil, the change that had been gone through, which coincided with a new principal and vice chancellor starting or taking office round about, I'm just trying to get my timings right, around about 2010, I think it was when he took up office. A lot of change, but having gone through that change, there was ambition to grow the institution, improve the university, and continuous improvement was seen as a large part of that. So it was fundamentally to create capacity to support that growth, that level of growth. So it was really aligned to this ambition. It was aligned to our strategy in terms of the number of KPIs we had, etc. It was also aligned, one of our parts of our strategy was around operational excellence. So the continuous improvement area really aligned very neatly to that. I think the other thing to mention is, which was really helpful for me and the team, was our university values, which I think sit very nicely with Lean. So we have 5 university values, which are, I get a prize every time I can remember them without looking at the document. People-oriented, ambitious, bold, collaborative, and innovative. And I think all of them fit really nicely with Lean and continuous improvement. Around that time as well, we were also experiencing, if we were looking for a burning platform, we were also experiencing issues with our international recruitment in the postgraduate area. So we were tasked with looking at that whole area of activity with a view to improving that process for the applicants, with a view of actually driving up the student numbers, driving up the fee income, etc., etc. So we did that, and that was really successful. And over the last sort of 10 years or so, we've almost had a continual eye on how we can improve that. And the growth has been, up until the pandemic hit us, unfortunately, the growth in that area has been fairly significant. It's been, I think, over 100% growth in that area, which is pretty impressive. Not all down to us, but that was our burning platform at that time, and that helped us, in a sense, demonstrate that this can work in our university, and it really helped shine a light on it. People sat up and took notice, and that was a great starting point then for us to move on over the subsequent years with other pieces of work.
Okay, brilliant. Thanks, Dan. And Michelle, I wanted to come to you next, coming from someone, as you say, is in post a year, just, kind of on the other end of the scale of your institution's journey down this road. Like, how did you get started with Lean, and what was at the heart of it for you? Why did you want to make these changes?
Okay, so Lean started, or was introduced in UCC by our director of strategic planning at the time, who had come from industry and had seen Lean at work there, and had got the buy-in of the senior management team. And he was really looking at it from the point of view of improving our processes and taking a less silo-based approach to things. similar to what Michael said at the start, we didn't have a burning platform. Well, we may have had lots of smaller platforms that were burning, but we had no major burning platform. And I think in a way that was a challenge for us, because we focused very much at the start. So in 2015, 2016, it was all about staff getting trained in Lean. And it was about how we're going to do it, as opposed to why we're actually going to do it. And I think because of that, it has been a slow burn, to stick with that analogy, but it's taken time, because the focus was we've now got X number of people trained. And there was also, I think, an expectation at the start from our senior management team that this could solve all our problems, and that by training a certain number of staff and getting those individual staff to work on specific improvement projects, that was all that needed to be done. And we've discovered, I think, as we've gone through the process and have had some really good pockets of change and where Lean has become embedded, but others where it hasn't, we discovered that the cultural change is something that takes longer. But my own journey in it, I guess, I was laughing when John was speaking about the postgraduate recruitment side of things, because that's exactly where we started as well. We knew we had an issue with the postgraduate applicant journey, and we had very clear ambitions about growing our student numbers. So that was one of the initial projects that I was involved in when I was actually in graduate studies. That was a Lean project. And I think I personality-wise, I'm always trying to improve things, and I latched on to Lean as a way of doing this. But one of the challenges that I noticed within my own area was, because a lot of what we were doing was changing processes, the measurement aspect became less important than the actual applicant experience. And looking at some of those measures where the focus had been very much on turnaround times, but we were focusing less on what our applicants thought about the journey. So really, as a result of that, we combined some of the Lean methodologies with other service design methodologies, and looking very much at the customer experience, which is very much an aspect of Lean as well. But it was combining those two. And really, it was a very gradual buy-in across the university to the idea of service improvement, and being something that does happen gradually as opposed to an overnight success. And that's kind of where we're at now, I think, is a recognition that it takes time for service improvement and continuous improvement to become embedded as a way of thinking within the institution, as opposed to very specific projects that have a specific time frame, and once they're done, you move on to something else.
Okay, thank you, Michelle. And just leading on from that, Michael, then I wonder if you could talk a little bit about why you got started using Lean in UCD, and the heart of it for you, if there wasn't that burning issue. Was there the same issue around postgraduate or graduate students as well, or was there another reason why you got started in UCD?
So we were born out of the 2015 to 2020 strategic plan, and the strategic plan had a lot of ambition in there, and a lot of which was achieved, and a number of initiatives were set up to support that, and Agile, or the initiative that gave rise to Agile, was a support for our strategic plan. So that's where it came from, and I guess it came because perhaps because the president came in from the UK at the time and was aware of Lean in higher education as a general thing that had been running for a number of years at that stage. And the goal was to help the university and UCD be able to do the things that would achieve our ambitions. So we were created out of a road trip that was done in early 2015 to see the various ways you might go about this, and UCD chose a small support unit, which is myself and Olga Murdoch and Josephine Aylward, as a support for the university in developing capabilities, in building a continuous improvement culture, and in helping the delivery of value and excellence. So it was all a support thing, and it's interesting to hear John talk about KPIs and measures. We weren't tied to any specific measures, and we were there then to provide that support to other folks. And so it was very much looking for others to have a need that we could help meet. And we came into the Lean Six Sigma space. When you hear Lean and Lean Six Sigma is a kind of structured problem-solving methodology, and you also heard green belts and black belts. You can get training at different levels in it, and so as a concept to bring Lean in, it made sense. You can do projects, you can get training, you can bring skills up, and that's how we started out on the Lean journey. Having said that, I think what John said as well is Lean, because it focuses on training and projects, it tends to be seen, can be seen as something aside from the day job rather than the middle of the day job. And that's been a challenge for us, I guess, is that Lean, when it works best, I think, in an organization, is how you do what you do. I mean, my personal drive for becoming part of Agile was when I was in registry. A big drive for me was, how do you reduce the burden of success? In other words, we've got to do all these things. How do you make it easier to do good stuff? And that was born back in a period of big change in UCD in 05, 06, 07. How do you cope with all that change and make it easier to do it and be successful? And that's kind of at the heart of Lean for me. And at the heart of Lean for me in UCD is people. Lean has the two sides of respect for people. It's the people you do stuff for, and it's the people who are doing it. And you're always looking for a win-win around how people can work in an environment where they're able to do good stuff and it's easier for them to do good stuff. And Lean then as a skill set becomes that thing around how do you give people the competence and the confidence to go and do those kind of changes. And Lean's great 5 whys is you can ask why, and often in environments where things work, you don't ask why. Lean says you should ask why always. And it encourages a whole innovation mindset that you don't necessarily get when you don't, like Michelle said, have a burning platform. We may well have had smoldering fires, but one of the issues in an organization of our size is people cope well with keeping smoldering fires under control. So you can have lots of issues around the campus, all of which are quite similar, but because there are no big flames and screams happening, they don't get paid that much attention to. So we've been working with folks a lot on the front line and helping them work in their own areas. And at this stage, I think it's over 850 people have been through training with us of one kind or another in the last 4 years. So a lot of folks have been exposed to it. And that's part of what we've been doing is helping them do the stuff they do locally.
Thanks, Michael. And I'd like to actually just pick up on something there that both you and Michelle talked about, was this idea of, you know, starting off with project work and applying Lean to a specific project, as opposed to applying it, you know, looking at it as an integrated part of what we do. And I wonder, maybe Brian, if you could just talk a little bit about what you think are the pros and cons of, particularly at the beginning, of taking this project-based approach versus taking an approach where Lean is a more integrated part of how you work as an organization.
Oh yeah. So yeah, as I said, we started 2010, and it was project-based approach. So I'll give you the numbers. So we're talking about 200 plus greenbelt projects. So they would be where staff took on a project by and large on their own time, took 3 to 6 months to deliver an improvement. But it was about numbers. Now the other side of it was you were also getting people trained up and giving them new skills. So that's the piece I saw on it. Apart from the project itself, you were giving the leaders of the future an opportunity to shine. Like I said, we're 3% of our staff with a third level qualification. So this is in many cases our first experience of being able to learn tools, learn how to stand up in front of people and talk and give presentations. So that worked for 5 or 6 years, or no, say probably 4 years. And after that, it definitely the level of interest reduced. We probably had got our quick win out of the way. And then we started finding where we're forcing people to come to training, forcing people to do projects. The quality of the projects reduced. The benefits we were getting were reducing. So at that stage, I would say maybe 3 years ago, we were really looking around to see, okay, well, what next? What do we do? We were certainly losing support. like I said, the world we're in is changing. E-commerce is changing our business. E-substitution is causing, like, we've had a 50% decline in mail volume in the last 10 years. So that was our core business. So now we have to go after a different type of business, which is far more expensive to operate. McKinsey came in, did a strategic review of OnPost, and part of what they said was that we need to start looking at lean as well as an operational excellence system. I would say there was limited buy-in for that. So we had a lean, we brought in an external company. They basically trained up 2 of us on what lean meant. We trained up a few more champions in the various mail centers. But I would say we had slow growth. And that's what lean is about. It's about growth, however slow. It does take a long time to change a culture. We've found that in the last 2 years, it's really ramped up. The speed of everything has ramped up, probably as much to do with COVID as anything. We've hit our 2025 targets for parcel growth last year. Okay, so we didn't plan on the amount of parcels we've had, so we've had to do something fairly radical. Lean, as it turned out, gave us all the tools. So the people that we needed to convince, they came to us looking for help. So we came back to them. We said, okay, well, we have this set of tools that we can use. We can look at changing the culture. So we introduced daily KPIs for every site, staff huddles. That was the biggest change for us. Making staff come before the shift starts, stand for 5 minutes and look at a couple of charts on the wall. But it was a way of communicating with staff. It was a way of motivating them, engaging with them. They were seeing the growth in parcels in buildings that were definitely were not fit for purpose. We were concerned that our safety record would go out the window with growth, but we've managed to keep that down. We're doing, say 2 years ago, we were doing about 80,000 parcels a day we were processing. Now with COVID and natural growth, we're up over 280,000. So the business has changed totally. And Lean has been a huge success in that. When it came to, say, our most recent burning platform, which was a peak last year, which is what we'd call it Christmas mailings, but it really starts in October. We really were struggling around October. So we managed to get a few more lean tools in. So daily KPI reviews with the management. Management has always been, I would say, the biggest barrier to success. You need a strong leader telling the middle management, this is the way we're going doing things. And OnPost traditionally hasn't had that. The leadership has really come from the unions. They decide what happens, the pace of what happens. So at Christmas last year, we managed to get in these daily KPI reviews, managers discussing KPIs with their middle management, more accountability on the line, and the staff engagement has really helped. Accidents have reduced. Staff are happier. They're more motivated. Throughputs have gone up in many of our sites. And this is even with manual sorting, people are working better than they were. But it has taken, unfortunately, we call it a couple of crises to get the buy-in from our middle management tiers for it to work. And like I said, it's very slow. Just because you say something to somebody doesn't mean that they're going to buy into it. It's going to happen. It's going to take years for OnPost to change fully on in terms of lean. We're doing lots of other things in terms of changing to e-vehicles and e-trikes and maybe alternate day deliveries, things like that. But lean is becoming more at the core of how we do things, the day-to-day stuff of how we do it. Does that answer your question, Lorna?
Yeah, and I think you picked up on a few interesting things there, particularly around engaging staff at different levels, and I'd like to explore that a bit more. But I'm just wondering, what I heard from particularly what you said at the beginning there was, taking the project-based approach was great at the beginning and got you off the ground, but maybe is not the successful way to do it in the more long term. And John, I'm just wondering, would that be your experience as well, or what would your perspective be?
I think it doesn't have to be one or the other. I think it's for me it's both. I think, and the reason I say that is because certainly when we first started off, it was project focused, large scale project focused, and I think the reason for that was the fact that you know, the senior management want to see that an impact. They want to see that this can work. Culture takes time, as everyone else on the panel has said, but delivering projects successfully buys you the time to actually do the cultural stuff along the same time. Because with every project, part of it is designed to change the culture. It's changing how you do things. It's giving people an insight into how this can be applied to the benefit of all, you know, the people doing the work, the people that the work serves, all that kind of stuff. So for me, the two go hand in hand, and certainly it has been an evolution for us, you know. So to begin with, it was large scale projects, then it was a mixture of large scale and sort of smaller scale tactical projects. And where we are currently is that we still run projects, we still support projects. We train people into delivering projects themselves, but a large part of what we do is also about, you know, building capability, creating the right environment, the right culture for this type of activity to flourish, you know, successfully. So I think they're not mutually exclusive, but I think you need to understand the purpose of why you're doing particular things. I think one of the things that I'm very conscious of in all of the work that we do is I always think about what's in it for them at every single level of the organisation, because it might be different depending on who you ask. Because Lean, a lot of it is about adding value, but the perception of value can be different depending on who you ask. If I ask the same question of everyone on this call about what do you value or from this particular service, I might get 25 different answers. So you need to be mindful of that. And the reason I mention that is from a senior management perspective, a lot of the time they're looking for evidence of the impact that this is having, and you need to be able to demonstrate that at any given time.
Yeah, thanks for that, John. And Michelle, just thinking about what you were talking about, you know, mixing Lean with your service improvements and change management piece, whether you would have shared a similar view on how you engage staff at various levels and what your experience was with that in UCC. Because you talked a little bit earlier on about silos within your university, and I think that's something maybe we're all a little bit familiar with.
Yeah, so going back to what John said, I had actually written down, what's in it for me? Everybody wants to know, you know, what they have to gain from something. So I think in UCC, I consider myself extremely lucky in that when I was working on the service redesign project, the project sponsor was the deputy president and registrar, who is now the interim president. And he bought into the whole idea of change management and the importance of his role as sponsor. And he was a huge champion for it and really had the enthusiasm to bring people along and really wanted change. And I think that was kind of key to gaining some momentum. But engaging people at all levels, one of, I think, our greatest successes has been the fact that people work more cross-functionally now, certainly across the registry, student experience and fees areas through the projects, and that's become the norm as opposed to something we would have, you know, when we initially held workshops, people may have been in contact by email or by phone, but would never have met one another face to face, which obviously is a challenge in the current environment anyway. But just that it has become normal to consider processes end to end rather than, well, we're not responsible for that, you will need to talk to somebody else. And that's something where it may not be an impact that can be demonstrated to senior management. That has really resulted in buy-in at a level across the organisation that's really key to enable this to really become embedded. And on the training side on that, I think there is a huge appetite among staff to engage in training, and everybody wants to improve the way they do things, but they often feel that they're not empowered to do so or enabled to do so. And really, by, I guess, shifting some of the emphasis that, you know, we're all in this together and everybody has a part to play in the improvement piece, and that everybody's ideas are welcome. And it's not that when you're at a meeting that it's the most senior member of the team who speaks at that meeting, that really it's the contributions should come from everybody and everybody has a part to play. Most importantly, the users of the service who are also involved in those workshops. And I think that's been a really lovely but kind of unexpected outcome of this whole journey for us, is just seeing the impact it has on staff on the ground and how they work with one another outside their traditional silos. And I'm not saying it's perfect, far from it, but it has certainly, we've seen a massive shift just in terms of that piece and people working more cross-functionally.
Thanks a million. And from what you're saying, I really like a few times now you've mentioned how the work that you're doing has kind of brought out the voice of the user and the user experience and brought that to the fore. And I think that's such a positive impact of taking this approach, is putting users at the heart of what we do. Michael, I just had a quick question for you, but before I go there, we are coming up to the time where we might be are going to have our questions and answer session. So if you do have questions, please pop them in the chat there and we'll keep an eye on them. And Michael, I just wanted to follow up with you about this idea of engaging staff and the process, and what do you think the implications are about how the project comes about? So have you been invited in, or were you kind of, was Lean forced upon people? And you know, how, you know, what's the most effective way to develop the Lean throughout the organization? Like how do you engage different people at different levels?
So I guess our starting point was to look to get quick wins through helping people deliver projects. And so in the first year in 2016, there were a number of Greenbelt projects run, and we looked at those as mechanisms for getting involved in a particular area. And if people were on the project team, they'd also get training. And so if you're running projects, you get this ripple out effect where other people get training as a consequence, and then project teams also involve collaboration and people from across the university. And so that was the way of trying to influence change. And as I think it was John said as well, it's building skills in people that they'll have beyond the project. A lot of it's around how you work with people, how you solve problems, how you have particular kinds of conversation, and the empowerment around that. And so that's how we were involved, was in looking for those kinds of projects and supporting those kinds of projects. That is successful up to a point, but in the non-burning platform context, what you're looking for is somebody to have a need that a project might meet, and the risk there is that most of the day job is the rest of your time. So people spend 100% of their time on the day job normally, and that's where you can get the most gains, is in helping people work in that day-to-day context, rather than standing aside. And so that whole idea of operational excellence is something that's been drawing us, and we were looking to pivot to that more in 2019 before COVID hit, and more towards Lean and not away from Lean Six Sigma, but the focus on helping people do the day job. And I think that's how one can get more traction with this kind of stuff in UCD. And the reason I say that is that if it's a project or training, it can be seen to be something to one side, and unless it's a really important project, it's usually a choice rather than a necessity, whereas everybody needs to do the day job. And there's all sorts of things in Lean that are good about doing that. The communication levels go up, empowerment goes up, you give more autonomy to frontline staff, you recognize their insight more strongly. And that's where there's the capacity to build, and that's why Michelle's talk about service design, and that is interesting when you're looking at rebuilding services or improving services, and Lean is part of a skill set around that, and change management. That to me is a rounder package for meeting day-to-day needs in UCD. And the change management bit is brilliant. Change management is about how do you not waste time and not lose money. So in other words, if you do a project, how do you make sure when you're finished, all the good work persists over time? that's really what change management is. How do you help people go on a journey, and how do you help that be valuable at the end? And that ties in strongly with Lean, which is all about making changes that last over time. So they harmonize quite neatly. But I mean, in talking to John, hearing Brian talk, and indeed Michelle, you know, some of where we were looking to move in UCD and as Agile is being clearly articulated in those areas. And it was interesting when we were having preparatory conversations for today's session to hear that both John and Brian talk about how they had begun more in the Lean Six Sigma space, but it moved over to the Lean continuous improvement. And what I like most about that was the empowerment of staff and the visibility that it gives them and the autonomy. And then you start to liberate people's innovative needs. I mean, the pointy end people at the front line tend to know what the problems are and they tend to know how to solve them. As I think Brian said, you can be the middle layer where things don't have the same kind of energy because they aren't on fire. It's the smoldering stuff that stays smoldering over time. What this is about, I think, is liberating change on a broader scale. So that's what's interesting for us around, and push rather than pull. You don't tell people to do it. You're looking to create a need that this kind of thing meets. I think that's how it works best.
Okay.
Can I just jump in there, Lorna, for a second, and just
Yeah,
to back up something
do.
Michael mentioned? What we found, again, coming off the back of the discussion about the Lean Six Sigma and the project methodology, I'd actually forgotten that when I looked yesterday, we've currently 17 green belts projects running. So where we had a trough, the Lean seems to be kickstarting green belt projects as well. So the ideas for improvements and the people coming forward to take on projects, Lean is kind of delivering that improvement as well. But the most successful thing we've found has been what I call, they're called Lean coordinators. So that's we have 4 of them in place in 4 different processing centers, and they're the people who really drive this. Okay, my job is to kind of motivate them and keep them working within a certain plan. But they are the people. When I interviewed for the jobs, they were all experienced, but they are hugely motivated, driven. They're very passionate about their job, about working for An Post. They were the right people for the job. You need something like that to be seen, to be serious about it. They bring people along with them. It's not the managers who are doing this. These people they're almost like missionaries. That's how I describe them. They're on site and they walk around continually motivating people and getting people involved and making small changes and, you know, getting ideas back from staff. So when somebody comes to them with an idea for an improvement, they go about trying to implement it or finding the right way to do it. So I think they're the cornerstone of this for us, is having that level of peer respect on site. That's where you get your improvements. It's not. We've also had experience where we've brought in outside consulting companies into different parts of An Post to try to implement Lean or Agile. They call it something else, but it wasn't successful, again, because they were seen as here's more consultants coming in with some great ideas, yeah, but not for me. So it didn't work. So I think that area within the organization has realized that now, and they've started employing the same thing, effectively Lean coordinators to work within the corporate side of things, a bit like yourselves, to try and deliver Lean and Agile. But it does take that. It takes that kind of an experienced, knowledgeable, passionate person who works within the business and has peer respect to help get it over the line.
Okay, thanks, Brian. I see there's a few questions popping in now, and I'm conscious of the time. So Michelle, can you let us know what our first question is there, and if it's directed for anyone specifically at the panel?
Okay, so we have 4 questions. None of them are directed at specific panel members as yet, but has anyone had experience of using Lean as part of a system implementation where the solution has already been purchased and the interplay between the system implementation and the processes that drive it?
I'm happy to take that one if you want.
Yeah, that would be great. Thanks, John.
Yes, I've had experience of that, both in a very extremely negative way and hopefully a more positive way. I think it. Before I answer the question directly, I think one of the things that I'm fascinated by is I think sometimes the promise of a new system can actually be a barrier to continuous improvement. because people stop improving because they think the system's going to solve everything. So I think that's the first thing, just to get, that's a bit of a bugbear of mine. I was involved over the last few years with a student information management system, and the solution was purchased. And I think, I know this meeting's been recorded, so I need to be careful what I say. I think it's fair to say that the implementation of it was an utter disaster. However, we've kind of rescued that, and part of the reason why it wasn't successful is because I think there wasn't that connection between, whether you call it lean, continuous improvement, business process. So that looking at the business processes, how you actually do things, and looking at the system capabilities, and actually working together on that. I think there was too much focus on what people actually wanted the system to do, and designing the process around people's aspirations as opposed to actually what the system's capabilities were. So where you ended up was huge amounts of customizations that cost a lot of money, which led to not a hugely successful project implementation. I think lessons were learned from that, and that you absolutely need to work hand in hand. So the business process side needs to work hand in hand with the system implementation. Things like standard work, one of the foundations of lean, standard work is hugely important when you're looking at a new system implementation. Universities are great places to, we talked about postgraduate taught application process. We've got 25 academic departments in Strathclyde. From when we looked at that, I think there was probably about 100 different ways of doing the same thing. Universities are great at that. So let's think about the best way of doing it and align that to the system. So that's how it can work hand in hand. The student record system was delivered ultimately successfully by using that approach. And interestingly, I mentioned earlier on that we're recruiting a new member of the team at the moment. The main area of focus for that new member of the team will be to work as part of a new HR payroll system implementation to do the business change, the business process side, working in partnership with the system implementation team. So I think the two very much need to be working side by side. So I think it's hugely important that happens.
Thanks, John and Bernadette. I hope that answers your question somewhat. Conscious of the time, so Michelle, we might just move on to the next question.
In terms of increasing capability, is it important to roll out formal accredited lean training as opposed to generic continuous improvement content?
Michael or Brian, do you have a view on that?
Well, just a quick one. It's really good for staff who go through training to get recognition for that. It also encourages managers to be more conscious of what they're asking staff to do when they go on training. So I think whatever form of training you do, there should be recognition, and there may be formal awards, and there should be badging in the organization to recognize what's being done and to understand how it fits together. But you can get different kinds of training, and Brian can talk to it as to how that's done. So lean continuous improvement is a formal approach with formal training as well as stuff you might deliver in-house.
Yeah, Mike. Like I said, we've probably over 1,000 people have done yellow belt training. That'd be a 2-day. It is over 10 years, a 2-day training, introducing people to the concepts of Lean and Six Sigma. They don't get accreditation for that. They get accreditation if they've got the training and they've been on a project team. They get a kind of a yellow belt award. Green belt, then, like I said, about 200 people have got that. They get a certificate and an on-post plaque. Okay, we try to share the successes, and we have a post people app. So we do a lot of publicizing of people who've got these awards. We also have within the Lean structure, I'm trying to think, there's no formal training within Lean, but what we find is that the number of people who do A3 improvements, they're small improvements, just looking at kind of 5 whys and fishbone root cause analysis, small improvements. What we do is we give them a certificate, again, get the photograph printed and usually stuck up on the wall in the site that they work. I think that's where it works best. We also, because it's A3, it fits nicely into an A3 sized frame. We put those up on a kind of a success wall as well. So people, when they see other members of staff getting their A3 up on a wall and getting improvement, they start asking the question, so what do I need to do? So they're not being taken off site. They're being taught new skills by using the A3, talking about implementing with countermeasures. So there, we call them soft training, if you want to call it that. And then finally, yeah, we've black belt as well. So we've probably on post 4 at the moment, and we started our 5th black belt training. He started about 2 weeks ago. So that's for a project to be delivered. It takes about a year for something of that scale. Does that answer the question in terms of the capability? It's a mixture of certification and also on-the-job, on-site training.
That's
Lorna,
great. Thanks,
Lorna,
Brian.
can I give a 10-second answer to that? Just very
Sure,
quickly.
go first.
Just to be slightly controversial, I accept what Michael and Brian are saying. I think it's probably important for individuals to get a certification. However, for me, it's not important. I think it's actually more important what you do with the training.
Okay, thanks, John. We have about 5 minutes left, and we've quite a few questions that are coming in. So I'm going to suggest that we'll capture the questions and can get back to people. Is that okay, Michael?
Well, can I pick up on one thing in there? One of the questions
Yes.
going by is there needs to be a connection between folks doing good stuff on the front line and what's important to the organization. And John talked about a strategic alignment earlier on. You need an alignment between the front line and something so that you can demonstrate to other people that you're achieving, you're getting closer to it, that you can have a sense of what's the before and after and how that fits into a bigger picture. If it's just little pockets of local improvement, it can be hard to get the support you need in delivering it. It can be hard to demonstrate the value you are delivering yourself. So if you don't have that kind of structure which is looking for stuff, it's much harder to demonstrate value and to persuade people of the importance of doing it. So if you're in an environment where you don't have that, know that you're vulnerable as a consequence. Whereas if there is some kind of alignment, you have a better chance of demonstrating what you're doing and understanding what's important.
Yeah, thanks for that, Michael. And I see more questions coming in, and time is against us because I know there's another session at 11 o'clock. So there are some quite specific questions that I think that maybe we can try and get back to people separately after the session is over and answer those questions for them. So I'm just going to wrap up now because I know Michael wants to say something before we finish up, but I just want to thank our 4 panelists for being so open and honest and giving such full and frank answers. I found it really interesting and I've learned lots. And thanks to so many of you for attending and for asking such great questions. And I'm sorry we didn't get to them all. So Michael.
I do no more thank yous than simply say thank you, Lorna, for chairing the session, and for Michelle for working with Lorna and doing it. It's been a great help to have the conversation chaired the way you did. So thank you for that. And thank you to everybody, my fellow panelists, and for all of those who've joined in from UCD and across the universities in Ireland. Enjoy the rest of your day, and we'll get off the line to let the 11 o'clock session start as part of Work Smarter Together 21. So thank you all and goodbye. Bye.
Bye.